Honor to God, our Creator, our Provider, and our Redeemer. We love the Lord our God with all our heart, with all our soul, and with all our strength. And we love our neighbors as ourselves, as we give honor to our spiritual guides, to our Illuminated Supreme Mother, Mildred Davis Miller, to His Holiness of Blessed Memory, Master Malvin Davis, to Jesus the Christ, to all the saints and loved ones of the Spiritual Guidance Temple of Truth, to our Supreme Father, Marshall Davis, to our Supreme Mother, Aletha Ravina Davis Drake, to all the saints who've gathered with us now and will be with us later in this broadcast, we greet you with Hotep, Shalom, peace abide. Okay, for our scripture, I'll be reading the 45th Psalm. And this song is called, the directions on the top of it said it's from the tune of the lilies, which I'm not sure if they know what the song is now, of the sons of Korah. And it's a missal, and it's called a wedding song. So I think when you're hearing it, you'll see how it's sort of like a psalm that talks about a king's wedding. Here begins. My heart is stirred by a noble theme as I recite my verses for the king. My tongue is the pen of a skillful writer. You are the most excellent of men, and your lips have been anointed with grace, since God has blessed you forever. Gird your sword on your side, you mighty one. Clothe yourself with splendor and majesty. In your majesty, ride forth victoriously in the cause of truth, humility, and justice. Let your right hand achieve awesome deeds. Let your sharp arrows pierce the heart of the king's enemies. Let the nations fall beneath your feet. Your throne, O God, will last forever and ever. A scepter of justice will be a scepter of your kingdom. You love righteousness and hate wickedness. Therefore God, your God, has set you above your companions. By anointing you with the oil of joy, all your robes are fragrant with myrrh and aloes and cassia. From palaces adorned with ivory, the music of the string makes you glad. Daughters of kings are among your honored women. At the right hand is a royal bride in gold, in the gold of Ophir. Listen, daughters, and pay careful attention. Forget your people and your father's house. Let the king be enthralled by your beauty. Honor him, and he will be your lord. The city of Tri will come with a gift. People of wealth will seek your favor. All glorious is the princess within her chamber. Her gown is interwoven with gold. In embroidered garments she is led to the king. Her virgin companions follow her. Those bought to be with her. Led in with joy and gladness, they enter the palace of the king. Your sons will take the place of your fathers. You will make them princes throughout the land. I will perpetuate your memory throughout all generations. Therefore, the nation will praise you forever and ever. I have read the 45th Psalm in the name of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Blessed Mother. Amen, amen, amen. Please let's repeat the Lord's Prayer in unison, but remember to keep your mics muted so that we will not interrupt each other in this broadcast. Here begins. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen, amen, amen. And now our song is called Love Divine, all love excelling. And the first line of the song is Love Divine, all love excelling. Joy of heaven and earth come down. Fix in us thy humble dwelling. All thy faithful mercies crown. Jesus, thou art all compassion, pure unbounded love thou art. Visit us with thy salvation. Enter every trembling heart. Okay, and now we'll have our meditation. Again, repeat after me, but keep your mics muted. This meditation is called God is the Glory Throughout All Ages. Please repeat. O Lord, you are the glory throughout all ages. Your light shines in my heart, my mind, and all my sinews. Bless us with peace. Bless us with health. Bless us with your unfailing love. Amen, amen, amen. And now we're going to do our Yom Kippur prayer that was developed by Father Rodney Williams based on instructions that was given to us by our Supreme Father Marshal for this year. So please, again, repeat after me with your mics muted. This day, I make the decision to improve my health. This day, I make the decision to improve my material circumstances. This day, I resolve all emotional issues in a manner that will bring balance and improvement to my life. This day, I elevate and enlighten my mind in ways to advance my understanding by meditating and reading good materials that will tell me of my divine nature. I thank God that this is so. Amen, amen, amen. That ends our devotion, and now we're going to go into our review. This is Pleasant Sunday. Normally we'd have a program. In the old days, we'd be singing, having poems, but a part of the Pleasant Sunday service is to review the lessons from the last Pleasant Sunday. And the last Pleasant Sunday was at the end of October, so we're going to be reviewing the lessons from November, December, and January this time. So if we all go all the way back to the November the 7th, the lesson was called Look into Your Soul to Judge Yourself. And in this lesson, it was, and I'll read on our website, we have these lessons up and you can go and listen to them again. And when you do that, there's a little blurb that tells you about each lesson. So I'm going to read the blurb that goes with the Look into Your Soul to Judge Yourself lesson. And it says, based on the Hebrew word for it, our soul is like a breathing being that connects us to the source of eternal life. For this reason, our ambitions and the driving forces of our lives should look at the rhythm pattern of our souls to help us to live our best life. The founder of the Spiritual Guidance Temple of Truth, Her Holiness of Blessed Memory, Mildred Davis Miller, incorporated this concept of soul searching in the 12 tenets of our organization. This session discusses that tenet, looking into your soul constantly to discover where and how you shall do the most good. So that was a lesson about our soul. The symbol we used was a symbol that was actually originally described by Father Lynn, and then I was thinking it was designed by our Supreme Father. For those who can see the screen, I know everybody can't see the screen, but up in there on the left-hand corner of the screen, there's a picture of that symbol there of the soul. But this is saying, this is actually the commandment for Scorpio. The Scorpio's commandment, again, is look into your soul constantly to discover where and how you shall do the most good. And the lesson talks about how, since the soul is breathing, that many times by watching the way that you are breathing, you can get a good idea or if you are in the right mood, if you're in a harmonious mood, or if you're in a courageous mood. You can watch your breathing as a way of getting a glimpse at how your soul is involving yourself in life. So it's saying that because many of the words that mean soul also deal with the breath. And so that way you can look at your breath to help you to get an insight to how your soul is feeling. So often we ignore our souls in our daily lives, but this is saying, no, you need to judge your soul, judge your breathing, and watch that breathing, watch that soul force within you to see how and where you shall do the most good. Because it's saying that you do want to have that Scorpio sense of action from Mars to do things, but you want to be able to, that you're doing the most good in all the things that you're doing. Anyone have any thoughts they'd like to bring from that lesson on looking to our soul back in November?
Hello, Father Tyrone.
Yes.
I
Yes.
just want to point out, because you made an excellent point about soul connection with breath, and just say that this is why it's so important that we constantly practice our breathing exercise.
Yes.
Every day we should align ourselves with our breath that connects us with our soul, that really helps develop our celestial body. Paul
Mm-hmm.
talks about being strengthened in the inner man. And one of the best ways to strengthen yourself in the inner man is through your breath, connecting with your meditation, as well as your prayers. So it's a very important point, a significant point that you made in terms of the breath and its connection to the soul, how we need to analyze it, and how we can apply it for our spiritual development and unfoldment. Thank you for the moment.
Oh no, thank you, because yeah, because yeah, I know people. I said, right, I'm glad it's come. We can show there's an agreement on that. That that learning how to breathe and even learning simple breathing exercise, like learning how to do a cleansing breath, which is just breathing in through your nostrils and then doing a forceful breath out before meditation. Learning how to do rhythmic breathing, where you count the length of the inhalation and exhalation, and sometimes holding the breath. And that means that you would breathe in for, and we'll say when you're simply trying to start up a person, you can even do it for 4. You can breathe in for 4, hold it for 4, breathe out for 4, to help to get that rhythm. And that will help you to learn how to calm yourself with that, and just learn how to increase that and learn other breathing patterns. But those are to help you to start to recognize your breath. And as you recognize your breath, as you are in life, you'll know when it'll help you to learn when you're getting out of sorts, when you're getting out of that calmness of breath that you need to make the best decisions in life. Anyone else have any comments before we go to 14, November 14th? And this lesson is called Unfolding Like a Lily Blossom. Unfolding Like a Lily Blossom. So now again, I'll read the blurb that we had from that lesson on November the 14th. Say, the blooming flower of a plant is a beautiful expression of its urge for creative for should have been creativity, for creativity and reproduce. Lilies are noted for creating its creative expression, even though they may be in a harsh, murky, and foul-smelling environment. From the 25th chapter of the Koran Gospel of Jesus the Christ, we are encouraged to keep focusing on our creative expressions, even if we are in an environment that is attempting to enslave us with harsh, cruel, and inhumane policies. All of nature and spirit will help us come to our own if we do not allow others to bluff us into submission. And here we were talking about unfolding like that lily, being that blossom, having that to bloom inside of you, because that flower. And here we were talking about the flower or the rose. A flower is the creative part of a plant. That is where the plant has its pollen and its I forgot the name of the female part of the plant, but that pollen has to get to that. It's not the stamen. I can't remember. In the lesson, I think we even had the picture of it to show you the male and female reproductive organs that were in the flower of the plant, and so it represents the creativity part of that plant. It's through how it creates a new generation. It's through that. It's how it begins to even create its fruit, is by fertilizing the sac, the female sac within the plant of the flower. So that creative ability we have, we were saying from that 25th chapter of the Korean gospel. And this is one where Jesus is in India and he's actually talking to some of the people who had been enslaved there and telling them how to live their lives, even though there are those that are trying to oppress them. And a part of that was to keep your mind active on its creative abilities, even during times when people are trying to use harsh and cruel ways to hold you back and using inhumane policies. That is the time that you need your creative abilities the most. Your creative thoughts and your creative ideas can blossom still just like a lily, even though the policies and the intentions around you don't seem to do that. There, in fact, those policies are there, and this is one of the concepts that I love from Marcus Garvey, even talking about the American use of its enslavement and its cruelty, is that there are people that believe in bluff. They are ones who want to show their anger, show their harshness in a way that it bluffs you or gets you to accept submission. A big part of it is for you to accept that submission. I don't think I talked about it then, but there's when you get into black consciousness speaking people, they do have some good things. And one of the things about it's called the book about Willie Lynch. And in Willie Lynch, it talks about that same type of way of they were trying, just like they would try to train horses by hobbling them and doing mean things to them, that the institution of lynching one person was actually to bluff the other people into submission. Now, when we think of lynching, we just think about it as not just a punishment for that one person. It was a public lynching. So it was actually shaping the attitudes of those who were actually there. It was bluffing them into believing sometimes cruel things. Even for the white people, it was bluffing them or fooling them to believing that God had created them more special than anybody else. God had created them superior to other people, that they would have the power to have that type of mob rule. But all of that is really just a bluff because it cannot dampen your creative expression unless you let it. Any other comments we have on that lesson on the 14th? November the 14th was this lesson.
I have a comment.
Mother
I
Loretta?
remember us talking about the lilies and the blossoms and how they blossom in milky waters. They can grow in any situation, dirty water or whatever.
Mhm.
They're gonna grow, and
Amen.
that's how we have to see our lives in any circumstance or situation, regardless of the environment. We have to be strong and be able to master and use our minds, hearts, and souls in order to blossom through situations and to get through.
Amen.
So we have to
Yeah,
be like that lily.
yeah, like that lily, and that's very important. I think that's why even Jesus talked about it. Consider the lily and how it grows. We have to consider that ability to be creative and use your inner creative talents to the fullest, so that you're always showing beauty, no matter what seems to be the circumstances around you. Anyone else have any comments or thoughts on that unfolding like a lily blossom? No, we'll go on. If you have thoughts later, you can bring them. Just I maybe seem to be going a little quick, but there's like 3 months and there's 4 lessons in each month, so bear with me as we go through this. Now, on November the 21st, that was the anniversary of our Illuminated Supreme Mother Mildred Davis Miller. But it was also the day that we celebrate the opening of the Spiritual Guidance Temple, the building that we have there in Pompano. And I think it was the 53rd anniversary of that temple, and it was I'm looking at the thing we did. It was the 113th anniversary of the birth of our Supreme Mother. So on that day, we celebrated both those things. We had a service actually at the temple on that day. We had people who were singing and presenting papers. So it was a beautiful, and we had our Saint Megan Davis, and I'm trying to Adelarile is her married name now, to actually read a message that we got from Mother for that day. So she taught that lesson. And in it, one of the things that I remember most about it is, she was saying that when she was a kid and she would always hear these people singing about this little light of mine in that song, she always would say, why are we always calling it a little light? That light that we have within us is actually a great light, a magnificent light that we have within us. And we shouldn't see it as a little light. We should start seeing how majestic that light that we have within us is. And from that message, it also talked about the message that we use now. And we actually say, remember at the end of all our services now, probably for the next year until we pull another message from Mother, is that we should repeat daily. Today, I will walk in the light, talk in the light, think in the light. I am the light within. And many of you on that day, our Supreme Father had an idea to make a little placard with that saying on it, and we were able to sell some of those that you can put on your altar and think of that on a daily basis. But thinking on that, you're going to, in your life, feel that you're walking in the light, that you talk in the light, you think in the light, and I am the light within, and realize that the light that we're talking about is that light or the glory of God. Anyone else have any memories that we'd like to bring out for that lesson?
Am I able to be heard? I'm on the phone.
Yes,
Oh,
you
okay.
are.
This is Helen Reed. Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning. How you
I would
doing?
like to. I'm fine. I'm fine on this cold morning. I would like to make a comment about that because I was just so fortunate and blessed to be in that service. And I'm looking right now. I have the little plaque, or I guess the saying from Mother Miller. Today I shall be in the light, walk in the light, think in the light. I am the light from within.
Mm-hmm.
And I have this on my dresser, and I focus in on it quite often because it's such a powerful statement, because sometimes we do have a tendency to, and this is just life, to maybe stand in the dark at times because
Mm-hmm.
life has been so difficult. And I've had lots of challenges with this year with the pandemic and other little personal issues. And I can find myself, not in the light, but maybe in the dark, trying to get out of the light. And
Mm-hmm.
this was so inspirational to me because it showed me that I don't care what you do in life, where you go in life, there is going to be light, and you have to find it. And it's right
Amen.
there. It's
Mm-hmm.
right before us. We just have to open our eyes and believe and know. So this was really, really, really powerful for me. And I really thank Mr. Davis. I think Mr. whoever gave this to us. I think it was your brother who
Yes,
made
Marshall.
it. But it's
Yes.
yes, Marshall. It's so beautiful. And I even brought one for my friend because
Amen.
she had wanted Dorothy Biggers. She was a great follower of Mother Miller, and I gave one to her, and she has really blossomed into this affirmation as well. So I do think I was very thankful that I was able to be there because, believe it or not, you never know where a blessing is coming from.
Yes.
And this truly, truly blessed me, and I was appreciative to be there.
Well, we're glad you were there and glad you will be with us and to speak with us. We like to have a service where people get involved and show and let them know because it's a beautiful thing to remember about that light and that you are the light. And as you're going through life, you kind of get blinded by turning away from the light and think that you're living in darkness. And I love one of the Isaiah in one of his things talks about turn me again, O Lord. And a lot of times that's what it is. We turned away from the light. The light is always there, but it's just like when you're talking about the dark side of the moon. If you turn the wrong way, you'll be facing the darkness. And what you need to do is say, no, I don't need to face this darkness. I need to turn and face the light. So thank you very much, Helen, for um,
Sure, sure.
for sharing that with us. So that was our lesson on November 21st, but it was a whole program, and it was a beautiful program that we had several people to. Let's look and see if I had the program with me, because now I forgot everybody who was there. It was, I know we had Father Lynn and I think Malcolm and some others that participated in that program for that birthday anniversary of Mother. And we had the candle service there and the
And then
self.
you have Megan speak.
Megan Speak, yes. And I was saying Megan that talked to us about that, not seeing it as a little light, that get away from that song of calling it a little light and think about how great and glorious the light that we have on us. So that was November the 21st. And then as we continue on our review, and then for those who came in late, we're doing a review of our lessons since last Pleasant Sunday until this Pleasant Sunday. The last Pleasant Sunday was in October, so we're finishing up the message for November. As we said, November the 21st was our anniversary. And our anniversary usually ends on November the 28th. And that is also the anniversary of Master Malvin's birthday. But the lesson we did for that week was based on our monthly message from our Supreme Father Marshall Davis. So this message tells us that a fulfilled life depends on on manifesting your faith. Similar to the mechanical engines which need fuel to keep operating, our faith depends on truth to keep it functioning at its best. Fuel your faith, not your doubts, says the message from Father Marshall. This talk looks at the Greek and Hebrew words that translate into faith. It explains how our talents and skills are fortified and fueled by our life experiences. It urges us to increase our faith by increasing our understanding of the truth. So in this lesson, we were looking at our faith and knowing that faith, just like a car, needs fuel. And the fuel that is the best fuel for your faith is truth. Truth should be the basis of being faithful. The more it is based on truth, the better you'll find that engine of your faith will run. And this was from one of the monthly messages that we got. That was for the month of December. So our message for December from our Supreme Father in 2021 was about fueling your faith by giving yourself the things that you need to manifest faith, but knowing that faith is connected to truth. It works best with truth. The Hebrew word for faith actually is very similar to the word for truth, of being something or being something solid. One of the words for faith is like aman. It's like the word amen, like you would say, so it is. And one of the Jewish writers I one time read talked about aman being coming from a nomadic people, that Aman was also the name they gave for a type of soil that is firm and solid. So that when you build your tent or when you're striking your tent, you look for soil that is Aman. And that Aman soil is so that when you drive those stakes in it, that it does not move. If you're pitching a tent, you don't want to put the stakes that hold the tent up in a ground that is too sandy, because that sand will just shift and your whole tent will come down. You need something that has a strong foundation, and so you can drill those spikes into it and that it will stay in place and hold the tent up. And so our faith needs that type of firm foundation of the truth for it to stand up. It just, it just can't be a stake with nothing firm under it. It needs to be a stake that is firmly based on things that last and are permanent. And that is what truth is. Remember, for our definition, truth is that which changes not. Truth is that which changes not. The truth does not change. And that's because the truth is firm, like that Amman soil that we are looking for. Are there any other comments from that lesson that others remember or would like to talk about as far as being able to fuel your faith, to giving your faith what it needs to be a, a source of a foundational source for your life, to keep you going in life? Fuel your faith, but fuel it with things that are truth. And when I'm talking about that, I want to say that I think one of the things I find most beautiful about our organization is that we try to base our life on truth, on being true about who we are, what we can accomplish, what we can't accomplish, of not being fake in any of the things that we do or talk about it. Because it's from being truth that you get that solid foundation that you can build upon. When you build yourself or your life up on things that are fake, that are just trying to brag or just trying to look down on others, uh, I find that you'll have this type of attitude to life that is full of doubt, full of anxiety. And what we want to have a life that doesn't have to have any of those anxieties based on the fact that we're putting our faith in things that are not solid and not really expected to come about. So anyone else have any comments on that lesson about fueling your faith?
I have a comment. A
Teresa?
song came to me um, that says, "Build your faith on things eternal. Hold
Yes.
God's unchanging hand."
Hmm. That
That's
is so
what
true.
came to me when you said that. Build your faith on things eternal.
That's right.
Hold to God's unchanging hand.
And that's the truth, because that's what's eternal. Because if it doesn't change, that means it's eternal and it's unchanging. Those are those things, and that's what the truth principles we try to get. That they are those firm, unchanging principles. That uh, yes, we say that they come for a time, and then or they predominate for a time. They really never go away. They're always there, but just some aspects of it are predominate at one time or another, and that's why they are called eternal, because they are never really gone. They some part of it just predominates at certain times, and some other parts of it predominate at another time. And but it's always become these true principles, and that's why I said that the hand of God, when you look at it as a whole, the whole never changes. Like when you look at astrology, the whole is always there. It's always that same order of illuminations or spirits or principles that are there. They're always there. At different times, different parts of it predominate, but all of them are always there. And that's how we try to determine the truth, is based on those unchanging principles and knowing when they predominate and why it's best that when they're predominating to get in line with the predominant one at that time. That's how our feeling on using astrology and other things is that because they predominate at different times, you should get in tune with the one that is predominating. But just like all the keys exist on the piano at all times. But if you're playing the piano and you hit one, that sound predominates, and that's what predominance means. That at some point that sound is the one that is resonating the loudest at that time, and that can make it beautiful when you can play the notes. Even when you look at the keys of songs, that you play the notes that are in harmony with the overall key that is predominating at that time. So, and a lot of music is based on using that principle. Is you find a key that you're going to play in, and then you play keys that are in harmony with that. And in life, you want to do the same thing. When you know that a certain key is the overall key for the universe, then when you play like notes in your life, the individual notes, are what we would call the melody of the song, that we want to play melodies that are in line with the predominant key of that time. Any other questions or comments or remembrances of that lesson? thank you for reminding us of that passage, Saint Teresa, that eternal and unchanging principles. So that should finish us up for November. And now we're going to be looking at the lessons that we got in December of 2021. And the first one that we got was calling Developing Cosmic Sight to See Heaven Open. And this was actually about the fact that, well, let me read the passage that I have on it first, and then we'll go back and talk about why we think we need that cosmic sight to see heaven open. And for us, it's opening, not just saying when you die and go to heaven, but we want to have a doorway to heaven open to us at all times.
Somebody's feedback is interfering. I don't know if somebody has their line open or something,
Mm,
but there's
okay, I
some
don't see it.
feedback that's coming through that's interrupting things.
Okay. I'll look closer at the thing and see, and so I can tell a person. It just means that that person may need to, until they're ready to talk, to mute their line. And remember, there are two ways for people on a telephone to mute their line. One, you can hit the *6, or you can hit the normal mute function on your phone, and it will mute it. And that way, until you're ready to speak, just unmute the phone, and you can be able to speak. But so, like I said, two ways when you're on the phone: *6, or actually use the mute button on your phone. So now we're at the December the 5th lesson, and talking about developing cosmic sight to see heaven open. And the passage we have written on that says, in the Gospel of John, the disciple Nathanael is impressed when Jesus' psychic abilities could see Nathanael under a fig tree before he met Jesus. Jesus tells Nathanael that as a disciple, he will see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. The phenomenon of spiritual gates of heaven opening for blessed children of God is recorded in other incidents, in such as Jacob seeing angels ascending a ladder and Moses seeing a burning bush that was not consumed by the flames. Heaven is often depicted as a spiritual realm that opens a pathway to blessings and cosmic insight while we are still in the material. This session discusses the principle of developing cosmic insight. So it's saying in the Bible, there are several instances where it tells us about this doorway to the spiritual kingdom that is opening up. And now, in the fact of Nathaniel, what it says that Jesus, because a lot of times we'll go to a psychic and we are impressed when the psychic can tell us something about what we've done before. So this actually happens to Jesus. Nathaniel, when he was called to be a disciple, he was probably like the fifth or sixth disciple, and I'm forgetting the number, that was called to Jesus. And when it was one of the other disciples, I think it was Andrew, or Philip. I'll let someone other people that get the Bible to remember exactly which one it is, that actually brought Nathanael to Jesus, because they had seen Jesus and they were ready and started following him, and they wanted to get some of the others. And when he went to Nathanael to tell him about Jesus, they were standing under a fig tree. Now, Jesus wasn't there when they were standing under the fig tree. He was not there to see them. So when Nathanael came and was introduced to Jesus, and he tells him about Jesus tells him that he's a man who has no blemishes in his life. Nathanael questioned and says, "How do you know me?" And Jesus said, "I could see you when you were standing under the fig tree." And Nathanael is very impressed by the fact that Jesus had the psychic ability to know and see where he was before he actually was in his physical line of sight. Just like many people, when they go to a psychic and that psychic can tell you something about something that has happened to you, or the name of one of your people, or the name of your dog, or something like that, they will get very excited and say, "Oh, this person must have spiritual, a spiritual insight if they can see this psychic occurrence." But then Jesus tells Nathaniel that, you're impressed by that, but what you really should be impressed by is, if you come and be my student, I'm going to show you how to the open that the I'm going to show you, or you're going to be able to see heaven open up and a spiritual blessing come down and descend on me, that you'll be there to actually see the angels of God come on him. Because we're in the Bible, we read about when Jesus was baptized by John, that a dove descended upon him, but it really doesn't say that everybody saw this dove. John saw this dove, and according to Jesus, his disciples saw this dove descend upon them as the Holy Spirit. But but what he was teaching his disciples was how to develop this type of insight, or a cosmic sight into spiritual things. And many times that is called for us, heaven opening up, is when we can actually begin to see the doorways of the spiritual kingdom open up through us. And it can open up, and just we say and see it, but we're actually using it for spiritual insight to be in other ways, because we teach that you have 5 senses. And with the 5 senses, they also have 5 correspondent spiritual senses. So just like you can say have a physical sense of sight, you have a spiritual sense of sight. You have a spiritual sense of smell. You have a spiritual sense of hearing. You have a spiritual sense of touch. All these have a spiritual counterpart to them. In fact, the material is really the counterpart for the spiritual part. And by developing this cosmic sight from spiritual training, that you will be able to open these doorways. And I mentioned that there are 5 of them because different people might open a different doorway. You may get your spiritual insight through aroma. Or you might get your spiritual insight through a touch or a feeling that you have. So it can open any one of your spiritual pathways, but it becomes something that is true spiritual insight. And and what some psychic people have an ability to see some of the impressions that you carry around with you spiritually, does not mean that they have to have a deep spiritual insight. Doesn't mean that they can see the actual spiritual angels. They can see some of the things that you have created around your own aura about you, but can they actually see the angels or the higher spiritual forces that God is sending and sending up to heaven and sending down to us from heaven? So we want to develop a type of spiritual insight that we can see these angels, that we can see things like Moses seeing this burning bush that was not consumed, not just seeing seeing it and not seeing its connection to the holy things, but develop that psychic sense that actually opens up heaven, and not just the astral king. In our terminology, it's the astral. A lot of times, a person who has psychic abilities, they're just seeing the astral realm around you. Can they actually see beyond that astral world and see actually into the heavenly celestial kingdom to be able to help you in the problems that you have? Any comments or questions about that lesson about developing that cosmic sight to open heaven? And that was on December the 5th. Then on December the 12th, we talked about praying straight to heaven like an arrow. And this was because by now we're under the sign of Sagittarius. And we're actually talking about the glyph, or the symbol for Sagittarius is seen as this arrow. Sagittarius actually means, it kind of just means an archer, or from the word arrow. But one who deals with arrows is probably the best description of Sagittarius, of the Greek word Sagittarius. But what we did is our Supreme Father Marshall wrote a book called Sacred Astrology. And in this book called Sacred Astrology, he talks about many of the spiritual lessons from the things that are in astrology. And let me read this passage, and we'll go back and we'll talk about it. Say, from the recent book by our Supreme Father Marshall Davis called Sacred Astrology, we can gain great insight into the spiritual lessons of the symbols used in astrology. One of the symbols associated with the sign Sagittarius is the arrow. The section of the book that explains the glyph of Sagittarius calls the symbol the arrow of aspiration. In the book, Father Davis says that the spiritual lesson from this symbol is that our praise and prayers should be like arrows. Prayer is a means to propel one's request to reach higher dimensions, says the author. This lesson discusses making prayers more effective by aligning our will with God's will. So here he's saying that one of the ways you can get your arrow to fly better is by aligning what you want with your will to God's will, by knowing those passages of truth and those things of truth, so that you can have a quicker, it's like saying praying straight to heaven. Many times our prayers, they are blocked because we haven't cleaned out all of our own ego from them and our own selfishness. We're using our own will in those things, and we have to be taught a lesson of how to cleanse those things away. Sometimes our answer actually has to tell us what we are doing wrong in a prayer, not so much what the thing that we're aiming it at. But this is saying there's a way to pray where it goes straight to heaven by praying for something and doing it conscious of the will of God. Anyone else have any comments about that lesson?
I have a comment.
Go ahead, Mother.
I would say if we're not straight in our conscious minds before we even pray or before we even meditate, we get our oils and we anoint ourselves, and then when we pray, our prayer is just like the arrow, because when you're praying, you want it to go straight up to heaven. So you want to make sure you're cleansed within and without, so your prayers will go straight to heaven. And then when you do pray, you make a point as to what you really want. You ask God what you want, because I talked to somebody last week, and they were saying that they asked God for something, and he gave it to them, but it wasn't exactly what they wanted. I said, well, did you ask God directly for what you wanted? All you have to do is be honest and ask him for what you want, and be direct. Ask him. Tell him what you want. He knows what you want, but you got to ask. You got to pray for it and be sincere in your prayers, that they go straight up to heaven, because most times anything you ask for, and if you're sincere and if you're cleansed, God will send it if it's meant for you to have it. And you might not get it right then, but you might get it at a later time, because sometimes we ask for things and it's not for us at that time, but it doesn't mean that we're not supposed to get it. So we want to make sure our minds and souls are cleansed and healthy when we do these things, and use the oil and consecrate ourselves and bless ourselves, so those things will go just like that point of that arrow, pointed right to the heavens, going straight to God.
Amen. And Mildred is so true. That's why we use those things like candles, and like having a prayer, or like the prayer that Mother has, we're saying, I'm the light. That actually gets you in tune with the concepts of heaven. So when you pray for things, that you will actually get the right, clear picture. Because, a lot of times we think that we say, if we know God already knows what we want, when we're wanting something, why we don't ask God to show us what we actually want? Uh, like you say, if you mix some of your own visions of things in there, it can diminish what you get. I find most of the times when I pray, I always get actually more and better things than I was asking for. And I believe what Mother Loretta said is so true, that you need to be specific about what you want to make you happy. But then when I get things, I'll find that, oh, I didn't even think about that, and yet it came through. Because remember, inside you, the inner person within you actually knows more about what you want than you do. And by learning how to be clearer inside and clearer in your dealings with God, you'll find that you'll get better and better blessings, blessings far, far beyond what you originally thought. And you'll be able to start seeing things for you in a way actually beyond your dreams. I think that God dreams for you, God's purposes for you, I find are usually, and for me, are even more than I even can conceive, more than I can think of. And by clarifying ourselves, like Mother Lera said, with things like the oil, things like the candles, or some scent of incense or something, find out what helps you to get closer into that alignment with the will of God, that feeling of peace. Remember, most of these lessons we talked about go together. So when we're talking about getting that breath right in that soul lesson, we're talking here about getting in contact with that will of God. All these things kind of tie in together to make you a more effective emissary of God, because that's what you have to start seeing yourself. You have to start seeing yourself that you're not just here for yourself. You are here to represent God on earth. And as that child of God here on earth, you open yourself more and more to receive the blessings of your Father in heaven. And you'll start finding that the things that you want will actually change and get higher because you're doing those things, like preparing yourself and then when I'm saying preparing yourself with the right type of affirmations before you pray, with the right type of breathing before you pray, with the right type of oils that you use when you pray, the right scriptures you use. All those get you into that frame of mind. But like Mother Laura said, but then when you actually see it clearly, start seeing it clearly, because remember, part of making that thing manifest is how can you bring it. You are a big part of how it comes forth into manifestation. And you may, when God may give you something higher, something more beautiful on the higher plane, it's some of your own actions, some of your own thoughts later that diminishes that prayer. And you don't want to diminish your blessings. You want to do things that actually increase the blessings. And like she said, when you become more specific about what you're asking for or what you are looking for, so and not doubting it, because a lot of times when you're praying for these things, you may say this thing, oh, I'm gonna pray for this, and I doubt I get this and this, and guess what, you get your doubts manifest. So you have to be clear in what you clearly have a vision of what you want and see that coming through. But I find the more you clear your own sight and your own abilities, you will begin to actually, as you're praying for things, you will even get clearer and clearer pictures of what it is you're praying for. But it's how you live your life, how you start getting rid of some of the selfishness and other things that that blocks your prayers, and realizing that you are a child of God and that the things you manifest are going to be of your Heavenly Father. Any other comments or questions? But thank you for those beautiful thoughts, Mother Loretta, to help people to understand that be specific. And you can be specific sometimes by taking the time to actually open yourself to knowing what you want. Like it's talking about, open up that door of heaven so you can know what it is you want, and you actually begin to see it. I know sometimes Mother would say that if you were even praying for a car, get a picture of that car that you want, and uh, and put it on your altar. Uh, you know, when I wouldn't want a car, because many times when if I was praying for a car or something, I would see the car that I wanted, I would see the color I want, and I would know when I was getting the right deal on it, because the car that when you go there, it ends up that things are in the car that you're looking at. So it can help be a clarification for you of those things because you put specific things that you're looking for. Then for when you go to the car dealer, because a lot of times you pray for a car, you got to go to a dealer or some car will come up and that car or that house will have the things in it that you this is all you want to get. I know sometimes my wife thought I was crazy because one of the houses, the house we got before this, I think we were starting to make the deal before I even saw the house. But because she had told me something, and she probably gonna say, "What?" Because she had told me something about the house that I already had seen that it was going to be in the house, I didn't even need to have to go and see the house because I had already seen what we was going to get. So I didn't physically have to go there. And I know she probably thought I was crazy, that she told me some things she saw in the house. I heard the things that I had seen in the house we are going to get. So when she said, "Oh, you want to go see it?" I said, "No, let's start making the deal." That didn't mean I didn't see the house later, but I already knew that the house was for us because the things that I had seen to be in the house were coming forth. Any other comments or questions? So that was December the 12th. And now we have two more lessons in December. And one was about the Christmas tree. This was on December the 19th. It say making Christmas trees more sacred with light, life, and love. And this again came from one of the sections of the book on sacred astrology by our Supreme Father Marshall Davis. And in that book, it includes affirmations that are very effective. And I'm reading some of the part here. It says included affirmations that are very effective in spiritualizing various prayers during specific astrological events. One of the affirmations prayers that we consecrate amongst time. One of them prays that we consecrate our Christmas trees as a sacred altar to request the manifestation of promises of divinity with my life. And this is from a quote. It said, "Consecrate our Christmas tree as a sacred altar to request the manifestation of promises of divinity with my life." In addition to praying that the decorations on the tree become spiritual symbols of divine wisdom, love, and power, the affirmation urges us to inspire an inner tree of life within us that will manifest healing and guide us to our life's purposes. The affirmation is a beautiful way to connect your celebration of Christmas to a spiritual Christian principles. So it's saying that there's and this is another beautiful part of the book. On each sign of the zodiac, and the book is divided into the 12 signs of the zodiac and an introduction to the whole concept chapter. But at the end of each sign of the zodiac, there are several affirmations on various points that reflect that particular sign of the zodiac. So in the part of the book that deals with, this is actually on the Capricorn, it has, and because it was near Christmas tree, and we like our Christmas tree to go up by this, or lights on the Christmas tree to go up on the 19th. It's like a week before Christmas is when we feel is a blessed time to have the light lighting up of your tree or the blessing for your tree. And so there's a meditation in the book that deals with the Christmas tree and making it a sacred place. And actually saying the place in your house where you're putting a Christmas tree is saying that see that as a sacred altar. See that as an altar that you're putting in your house. Not just something for the toys, but a place where spiritual blessings can gather in your house. That's why you're looking at the tree as if it was an altar for you. And in looking at it as being altar, you would then see some of the decorations that you have as also spiritual, representing spiritual symbols that you want to bring into your household and bring into your life. So that's the second part of it. So one, the tree, the area that the tree is in becomes like a altar that you're making in your house. The decorations you put on it are like prayers or spiritual symbols that, because you're not just, like I said, you just not want to bring physical gifts in your house. You want to make it bring in wisdom, love, and power through the affirmations that that spiritual Christmas tree that has now become an altar actually can bring you spiritual gifts. And the third thing you want to, it talks about in that affirmation is also saying that inside of you, just like you're putting a Christmas tree inside your house, see that you're putting a Christmas tree inside that inner you, the spirit of you, so that it becomes like a tree of life. So then the Christmas tree actually represents the tree of life. And you know, the tree of life was the tree that was in the Garden of Eden, is also in the Kabbalic system, it is a connection of divine principles that connect together in an orderly manner, is that tree of life. And so inside of you is that orderly collection of spiritual gifts that at Christmas time you actually help to charge them and ignite them and light them up so they'll be with you through your year. So any comments or questions or insights or
Morning.
words
Good
on that
morning,
lesson?
everybody.
Good morning, Deacon
What
Jackson.
what a wonderful lesson, Father Tyrone. I was just sitting here listening, and you know, in my spirit, is just touching all bases. You know, when Mother Loretta was speaking about divine, you know, I thank God. I truly thank God that when I start praying, I try to not just sit in one place in my house. I try to go through my whole apartment because I ask God to allow my whole house to be holy, you know, holy and acceptable, you know. And I also thank him for that light because he said I would be a lamp, a light up under your feet, you know. So I just, you know, I'm just so captivated into this lesson, you know, and we can't forget about the oil. Y'all was talking about the oil, but we have to pray and ask God to continue to let our cup run it over. Sometimes we forget. We have to ask our oil run low, and we have to ask God to replenish. You know, let our oil continue to pour out. Give us another oil that it will overflow in that cup that He speaks of. You know, and it's different scriptures in the Bible, and they just so privileged to us. You know, even on the 23rd Psalm when He said we walk through the valleys of shadows of death. What is the valley? The valleys can be anything and any time. You know, your house can be that valley. When you step out of your car, that can be that valley. When you going to check the mailbox, that can be that valley. So we have to continue to know that His words is so sufficient. But I just bless God, and I just wanted to put that out there. And you know, and I just thank God for this lesson, and it's a privilege and honor to hear Father Marshall's voice on the line this morning. You know, that just sends out anointing yourself just to be knowing that this is a prevalent lesson, that we are being blessed on this day, the last Sunday in January, the first Sunday that's in the last Sunday that's in this new year, you know, of January, this 22. And we're already seeing these things that's already coming upon us. So we have to continue to pray, but we have to be specific. You know, I pray and I ask God to be the air that I breathe, but I also ask God to breathe through me, you know, to breathe through me. That way, you know, and let me be purified, that He can use me, you know, not just for myself, but for His glory. You know, we remember when Moses went up to the mountaintop and with the Ten Commandments, but when Moses came down, he was covered in God's glory. He had that shine upon his face, you know. And I just think we have to always remember, you know, not just remember, but we have to speak it back and give it back to the Lord, you know. And I often tell Him that I need Him right now. I need to feel His grace. I need to feel His presence. You know, I need Him. I need Him to be my eyesight. I need Him to show me what He want me to be. Show me what He see in me. That way I will know, because I don't want to stumble. I don't want to get in His way, you know. And I don't want to become no hypocrite, because we have to be careful, because God wants us to love one another, not judge one another. But at the same time, we have to be strong. We have to be strong. We have to build that faith up, because faith is the substance of things hoped for. So we have to always be carnal-minded to ask God about these things and to speak with him and not be in such a rush, because prayer is conversation. And there's nothing wrong with having a lengthy conversation with the Lord sometimes, because sometimes we think we know, but we don't know. And it's very important that God will show you the things that you need, but you have to be carnal-minded to action. You have to ask him. The same things with the angels. If you don't never ask your angels, if you don't never get permission to summon your angels, they won't move. These are things that help us grow and help us get to that point where we need to be. So I just bless God. I love everyone, and glad you enjoyed your birthday, Mother Teresa, and I love you, Mother Loretta. God bless you.
Thank you, Deacon Jackson. It was just very inspiring words, because, yes, it's something we all need to do is start looking at even the parts of our house as something that is more sacred, and finding out once you do that, it actually, we were talking about fueling your faith, that will begin to actually fuel your faith because of the things that you are actually igniting around you. Now, some of you have, I know Deacon Jansen mentioned that our Supreme Father was with us. He was with us earlier. But that's why I like him to be able to speak early, because I know at 11 o'clock he does a service. And so he did, so he was with us earlier, but he's not with us now. But I'm sure he'll be back with us on another lesson, because they have another WebEx that they do from the Divine Life Temple on Sunday mornings, but they start about 11. So he's off to that other service. But we were glad to have him with us earlier today. Did anyone else have any comments before we go into December 26th, and we'll be finishing out our 2021 lessons?
I have a question.
Yes.
When I grew up in rural Mississippi, and I can remember in the church, when anybody got to pray, they had to get on their knees. And I remember being told that God will answer your prayers if you bow on your knees.
Mm-hmm.
And when I became a member of New Thought, I found that you could pray anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
God will listen to you pray anywhere. So what's that concept about getting on a knee to pray?
Okay. For us, we were saying when getting on your knees, it's actually showing that you are humbling yourself before God. The act of getting on your knees is how you're, like we were telling, like the lesson was talking about, getting aligned with the will of God. That's what they were doing when they were getting on their knees. Now, you can have it as a practice of saying getting your knees are doing it, or you can start finding other words. How do I align myself with God's will? Because getting on the knees is just a ritual for it, but what you're really trying to do is humble yourself before God, and humbling yourself before God is meaning you're aligning yourself with God's will. So when we're telling you that these things will help you align yourself with God's will, it is doing those same types of things. So you'll find in some of the spiritual churches, they will tell you something like sitting up erect, or raising your hands, doing all things like that. All of them is to get you aligned with God's will. Even in when the other churches, when they were talking getting on their knees, you'll find that many of those people, when they got on their knees, they actually felt that they were closer to God, but what they were closer to is aligning their will with God's will. So it's not that it is a bad practice, but there are other ways to do the same thing. But it is because it is very important that when you're praying, that you align yourself with God's will. And in some of the other denominations, getting on your knees is one of the ways to align yourself with God's will. Did that answer the question?
Okay. Yes, it does. It does.
Anyone else have
Thank
any?
you.
No problem. No. We'd love to do that because a lot of times when we do rituals, even when we do rituals now, is how we would bow. People don't see that self is a way of humbling yourself and aligning yourself. Because when we were taught about bowing is not so much that you are bowing to a person. It's bowing is also a way of aligning yourself and how do I explain that? How getting the whatever blessing that you're seeing has been presented, of actually trying to get it to flow throughout your whole body. You want to that because you what you're doing is you're taking the energy that's on top and you're making it where it goes and flows all the way down through your body. And when you bow, that's what you should be thinking of. How this blessing that I'm being a part of, that I want to actually make it incorporate into my body, where it starts with my head, it goes down into my body, and it goes all the way to my midsection, and then settles down as it goes into my the lower part of my body. It's a way of aligning and infusing yourself with those blessings. So for us, rituals, whether it's getting on your knees or bowing, all of them have a almost scientific spiritual process that they're trying to do, but it is actually the spirit behind it. Because if you can get that energy to enter into you and go down through your body without actually bowing, beautiful. Does the bowing help? Yes. Does the getting on the knees help? Yes. If you do it in the right spirit, in the right mindset. And so when you do it, it is the mindset or spirit that you're doing that's actually the most important part of it. The ritual is just something, is a tool there to help you accomplish that.
Right. Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you. And any comments on that, the Christmas tree and how to make it more sacred? Because like I said, you could put up a Christmas tree and it will just be a Christmas tree. It would just be something there that you can celebrate Christmas and put gifts under. But what this lesson is saying is you can spiritualize your Christmas tree. You can make it where it becomes something sacred. It can become an altar if you use your mind and heart and soul in the right way of connecting up that tree. When we were talking about opening up heaven, connecting up that tree to the spiritual realm, because that's what you want to do. And so since we're talking, you also want to connect up. If you still want to pray on your knees, see yourself that you're doing that to connect up to that humble spirit that you're under, that you've bent down before God. Or if you bow, that you're bowing down before God's spirit to infuse it into your body.
Great.
Okay, thank you. And now we're at December the 26th. I'm going to read. This was the first day of a celebration known as Kwanzaa, which is, and I'll say, December 26th is the first day of the African American celebration called Kwanzaa. It is dedicated, in saying the first day, to Umoja, unity. The Bible also tells us that it is good and pleasant to dwell together in unity. In this session, we discuss the amazing life concepts taught in the Kwanzaa tradition, as well as several African traditions that are good for the edification of our lives. One of the African symbolic traditions discussed is the Adinkra symbol known as the Siamese crocodiles. This African symbol of unity teaches us that to be ferocious fighters, to feed the common stomach, but not to fight against each other, because we are joined together. This session also discusses two Hebrew words for unity, Yahad and Ihad, and how they relate to our spiritual development. So on that lesson, we were talking about, it was the first day of Kwanzaa. The first day of Kwanzaa is dedicated to the principle of unity. But you'll find that one of the things we talked about in this lesson is that all of Kwanzaa is kind of devoted to unity through a community of coming together in a communal way of doing things. So this lesson talked about how Kwanzaa is trying to tell these African principles, because sometimes we've been taught to ignore African principles and African concepts as something that are heathen or something that are ungodly. But then when you look at the principles being taught in them, I find that they are actually more inspiring to me than some of the Greek and Latin concepts that we accept without even thinking about them. No, we say that we follow the Bible, but then we'll take a Greek concept like to the victor belongs the spoil, and we will accept that. And to me, there's no related concept in the Bible that tells you that just because you can beat up somebody, that you actually own their stuff. Um, and there are other Greek, Latin, and other types of principles and philosophies that we accept. And even though we'll talk about the Bible, we will talk about those principles and act like they were, that's life, that's the way life really is. But then I find that when you look at some of the African principles and concepts, you can find a relationship between them and some of the true Christian concepts you find in the Bible. So when I was looking at Kwanzaa and they have this concept of unity, and then I look at the Bible and it says, "Behold, how good and pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity," and say, "Oh, wait, those two things connect." So I see, even though Kwanzaa is not a religious celebration, Kwanzaa is not a replacement for Christmas. Kwanzaa is an African American celebration to show what principles they felt were principles that helped the Black people to make it during some tough times in life. That's what those 7 principles of Kwanzaa are. But when I look again, when I look at those principles, I see principles that are in line with Christian principles. Not that they are a replacement for them, but they are in line with them. So I can align them better to the Christian principles that I believe in than I can some of the other types of principles. Like I said, the Latin and the Greek principles of things that we sometimes just accept as true. I like, or I find more inspiration from some of the understanding of the African principles that are trying to be taught with the symbols. And in this one, since we were talking about the Kwanzaa principle of unity, we talked about one of the Adinkra symbols, which is another African, which is a purely African symbolic tradition. Remember, Kwanzaa is actually an African American celebration. So this was not something that started in Africa. Kwanzaa actually started in America. And their Americans of African descent came up with these 7 principles that they felt from their African heritage were things that helped them to survive and thrive wherever they were are in the world, and survive and thrive through bad times and good times. So they're not like principles of saying, "Oh, this is what made it help us to get through bad times." It's saying these same principles of unity and self-determination and collective economics. These are things that helped us when Africa was at its height, and principles that we feel that when Africa is in a downtrodden or colonized or stolen from, that it keeps it to be a powerful nation. And one of the symbols they have in the Dinkra symbols for unity is called the Siamese crocodiles. These 2 crocodiles that are joined together by the stomach. And it says that they fight for food and yet they fight for food and yet they share the same stomach. And the teachings behind that is that because they share the same stomach, if they fight other things for food, they will supply the common stomach. But if they fight each other, how is that is going to actually be a detriment to them? So it's saying that unity, first of all, to me, one of the things it says is that unity in a community needs fighters. Because if you don't have fighters, you have nothing going into the stomach. If you just, or you have less going into the stomach if you don't have fighters out there. You'll get more if you have fighters. But your fighters, for it to be a true unity, have to stop fighting each other. So for those who can see the screen, and no, not everybody is looking. Most people are not looking at it where they can see the screen. We have a picture of the Adinkra symbol of the Siamese crocodiles, and another Dogon symbol of unity, which is the unity knot, which looks like 2 paper clips that are form a cross together in a knotted fashion. So this is just one way why I try to bring in African principles. And I bring in African principles again because I find them more enlightening and more inspiring to the Christian principles that I believe in than I find some of the philosophies that we even have. You know, they'll take the philosophies of people like, what is it? Not Kant and what's the one they always use in education? What is his name? Pisana, whatever it is. Piaget, I think I hear my wife saying out there. Some of their philosophies, even
Piaget.
when I was thinking, say it again, Teresa?
Piaget.
Piaget. Some of those philosophies they have, I find them to be so lacking in Christian principles, and so illogical. And when I say illogical, a lot of them have this thing about thesis plus antithesis equals synthesis. When if you look at it mathematically and logically, it does not, because it's like saying 1 minus 1 equals 2 and 1 minus 1 equals 0. It does not, it's not a synthesis of the things. It's they negate each other. When you put a thing in its opposite, they tend to negate each other. But because they have this philosophy that the universe is not like a vacuum, they actually create a vacuum to cause change in the universe with no idea of what that change is going to be. So if you and they use that a lot, that they say, oh, if you just keep creating these vacuums, that universe will not let the vacuum stay, and so you'll get a change. And they'll give that as a principle of the chaos part of the chaos thinking and the zero sum game. All of them are based on this idea. And zero sum game is basically saying that one side has got to win and one side is going to lose. So anything you can do to help the other person to lose is going to help you win. Now, all these types of philosophies, and we hear them and live by them and go by them and never question is saying, wait a minute, first of all, is there another set of philosophies that we can live by? And I find that the Africans, the Hindus, the Chinese also had different philosophies which they lived by. And two, like we're talking about aligning with God, do these principles align with the principles of God? And I said, I don't get it. I don't see how these principles align with the principles of God. If other people can find that it helps them to get closer to God, that believe something like to the victor belongs to spoil, is that going to help you to get closer to God? Or by having that zero-sum games when one person has to lose and one person has to win, does that help you to get closer to God? Or believing that a thesis plus its antithesis is going to equal a synthesis, but it's going to do it because when you create a vacuum, that the vacuum is going to be filled with you don't know what. I would rather use a mathematics of knowing, because math should teach us to get a known principle. You know that 1 plus 1 equals 2, 1 plus 2 equals 3. So why not use something that you know what the outcome is going to be, rather than saying, oh, we'll just destroy what's there and just hope that what comes afterward is going to be something better than it was before. I don't believe in that type of philosophy, but I believe that Africa, ancient Egyptians, Hindus, the Bible gave us principles that were eternal principles that will bring forth eternal good. So that's kind of, did anyone have any questions or comments about the wisdom of Kwanzaa and dwelling together in unity, which was our lesson for December the 26th? Now we have one more month to go. We're in January now. Now we're in 2022. And our first lesson in 2022, this is on January 2nd, was appreciating wise and encouraging words. Now this was from a message. This message for the month of January from the Supreme Father Marshall Davis advises us to be thankful for those who are placed in our life for your growth and prosperity. Appreciate those who give of themselves to make your life better with wise and encouraging words. The message says that arrogance will blind you to the support you receive from heaven. Thankfulness will help to increase your blessings. This lesson also discusses peace, that is a result of facing conflict and negotiating a mutual beneficial relationship with others. Peace established through thoughtful collaborations are more stable than just accepting bad circumstances in an attempt to avoid violence and aggression. So this again was this is our message for January. Um, and it was done on the 2nd of January. And in that message, it tells us about being thankful for those people who give you wise counsel in your life, because that helps you that thankfulness actually helps to increase blessings, while being arrogant actually decreases your ability to receive blessings. And we've kind of talked about that a lot, that when you use your lower mind and your lower intentions, it actually diminishes the things that you're going to get. While being thankful in the things you're doing, it actually makes blessings even more. When we're talking about those prayers where you get more, it's because of that thankfulness that you have. And that thankfulness, we were talking about it as humbleness, that humbleness that you have before God, like I said, when you're kneeling down, or that practice of bowing and having that energy to flow throughout your whole body, to showing that you're appreciating that energy that you're receiving from that prayer or service or whatever. That all of that is helping to increase your thankfulness and saying, I want this blessing to increase in my life, rather than saying I'm going to be arrogant and think that I'm just doing it on my own. Any comments or questions on accepting wise and encouraging words? So that was our lesson for our first lesson in January, our first lesson of the new year. And that was our new set of lessons, because messages, because each year at the end of the year, we pull messages that had their 12 messages that come. And so for 2022, we got that first message. And there is usually on the envelope, there is another principle. And on the envelope of our messages was the word peace. So the symbolism that we look for were symbols of peace. And again, we used a two Adinkra symbols that represents peace to that be a part of that. I'm not going to kind of go on, because I think we want to make sure we get through all four of these lessons for January. So if there's no comments or questions about that, I'm going
I
to go to
remember
January.
also, I remember some things that you said about prayer. And you
Okay.
said you should start our prayers with three things: to praise to God, partition, thankful for the help you're getting. Those are the three things that you said. And you said also that we have to build character, and that our word be reliable, true to what you say you're going to do, you do.
Thank you, Mildred. Yeah, she was saying that that kind of practice of the three parts of the prayer comes from Jewish traditions, that they said all prayer should include those three things, and it should start with one, praising God. You should have part of the prayer that actually is a praise to God. You should have a part of the prayer that is actually petition, or the thing that you're asking for, and then there's a part of the prayer that you always give thanks at the end of that prayer. And they said that all prayers, short, whether they're short or long, should include those three parts to it. So thank you, Loretta, for reminding us of that part of that part of discussion on that day. Anyone else have any thoughts, or because something else Mother Loretta mentioned, I've forgotten what it was now. What was the other part of what you said, Mother Loretta?
Part,
It's about the three
which
parts.
is,
You said the three parts of the prayer, and was something else you mentioned. What was it?
yeah, and I was saying we were talking about building good character. Let
Right,
your word
building
be
character.
reliable. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a big part of what you're trying to do in life. When you're saying being a child of God, it's actually mean building your character to become that divine being that God created you to be. That's what it's about. And it's not becoming somebody else. It's actually becoming your true inner self. Is when you build your character, you actually build your ability to express the inner principles that we have in us from God. Okay. And now and December 9th, we were in the, we were in the astrological sign of Capricorn. So we looked at the thing was called The Capricorn Secret of Being Content. And here we're back into the book Sacred Astrology, and we're talking about the glyph, or the written symbol for the sign Capricorn. Let me read, and then we'll come back and tell why this is about. It helps give us a secret about being content in life. And the written part of it narrative says, in the 12th verse of the 4th chapter of Philippians, Paul encourages us to learn the secret of being content in any and every circumstance, any situation, I'm sorry. Excuse me, I had to cough, so I muted myself for a minute. So Paul encouraged us to learn the secret of being content in any and every circumstance. This type of adaptability is also indicated in the spiritual symbol and glyph of the astrological sign we know as Capricorn. Looking at the description of Capricorn's glyph in the book Sacred Astrology by our Supreme Father Marshall Davis, we learn that the half goat and half crocodile, or sometimes fish symbol of this sign, teaches us about adaptability. It teaches us to use our ambition to help further the development of our soul. We can learn to be as sure-footed as a mountain goat, using every crevice, crack, and ridge to climb to higher states of consciousness in our lives. We can learn from the crocodile, which is known to bask in the sunlight, to energize its body when it finds itself in a chilling situation. Adaptability, inspired by prayers, affirmation, and meditations, can overcome listlessness, depression, and despair. So this is again from the book Sacred Astrology. I say you might have noticed that I've been using it a lot. It's going to be coming out in print again soon. It was some copies, a limited number were printed almost probably at the beginning of last year or somewhere there. And now they've made some corrections and modifications to it, and they're going to be printing up some additional copies of this book, Sacred Astrology. But it was actually designed by our Supreme Father to be something that you could use in lessons. The prayers that have in there were prayers that they could use during services, so that others who come and form an organization like ours will have a body of knowledge that they could use to understand and to teach and to present these things that are part of our life. So I'm kind of trying to use the book in the way that it was intended to use it, by using passages from it to teach lessons in our services. And this is comparing his talk on the glyph, and a glyph is just a symbol or a mark that represents something. And there's a mark that represents Capricorn. It kind of looks, one way you can look at it, it looks like a V with it connected up to a S or a wiggly line. But in it, in this lesson, we talk about what it represents. Is the part of it that looks like a V is supposed to represent the hoof of a goat, or a mountain type goat, a goat that can climb. And the wiggly line on the other part of it is supposed to represent either a fish or a crocodile. Are both symbols that it's supposed to work. So it's this. Sometimes when you'll see the sign of Capricorn, you'll see this symbol of a goat and either a fish or a goat upper body, and either a fish or a crocodile as part of the lower body. And so what he is explaining here is that that symbol represents being adaptable, being able to climb up the mountains and being able to navigate the seas. From the Bible, one of the principles what we see about this is I looked at something that Paul said in Philippians, where he says that the secret to being content, that he had learned how the secret of life was being content in every situation. And Paul talks about that whether he's rich or he's poor, whether he's hungry or well fed, he can find inner contentment in his life. So Paul again here is talking about being adaptable, and we'll find out in this lessons that we find that behind this symbol of Capricorn is also talking about that adaptability. How do you adapt your life, adapt your drive or your ambition? Because Capricorn is also seeing a sign of ambition. How do you adapt your ambition to be able to function in all circumstances in life, not just during the good times, but how do, when you're climbing to the highest peaks, that you use that adaptability strength to be able to use every instance or every crack, every crevice, every anything you can find to be able to take you higher, but also being adaptable enough that when you're in a situation, whether it's cold and the situation is not to the best, how do you find ways to energize your body? Just like a crocodile or an amphibian would find a way to find some sunshine or find some place of warmth that will help to give it the energy it needs to work for its body. And as a key to that adaptability, in the book Sacred Astrology, it talks about this and what your inspired prayers, affirmations, and meditations help you to do, that they help you to adapt to both circumstances. It helps you to be, they can help you to overcome listlessness, depression, and despair. And during good times, they can help you to have that peace of mind. Because a lot of times that's what happens. When we have good times, a lot of times we get a mindset that stops us from paying attention to what's going around us. And that's bad. We should, even in good times, we should always still be looking for how can we make improvements? How can we make it better? How can we not trample over others as we're going up? And how we can use what everything is there to keep our consciousness, and we talked about it earlier, our character. How do we keep our character moving closer and closer to that one with God? Any other comments or questions about that description of the symbol for or the glyph for Capricorn? And for those who can see the screen, in this we use for one that glyph of Capricorn, which again, when you look at the symbol, is supposed to represent the hoof of a goat and the tail of a crocodile or a fish hooked up together to show adaptability. And when I made the glyph, I also used an adinkra symbol that represents a crocodile and also represents adaptability, because they believe that a crocodile is adaptable because it can live and survive both on water and on land, and they see that as a symbol of adaptability. So any comments or questions?
And also, the crocodile represents long life.
Right. Crocodile represents long life. So all these things are part of. Because remember, we look at the astrology as a notebook or symbols of knowledge that we can use in our spiritual life, not as just it's some spooky things. It's a great science and a great knowledge that about building character and spiritual power that is shown in astrology. But again, I like to say that when you compare it, the concepts that they talk about in the Bible it's the same spiritual concepts that there the way we look at it, not just looking at astrology as I know I had a conversation with someone the other day, and they were talking about isn't the way that we use astrology to hook to assign people to certain signs a relatively new process? And I answered the person, yes, the way that they use astrology now is you. Not that astrology is not old and that the astrology principles go back way back in time, but the way it is used now to what is called natal astrology is not as old as we think it is. But when you talk about the astrological principles, they go way back. Your ancestors were looking at those stars, and not just to navigate things; they were using them to help to understand people and help people become a part of the village. Now you'll find that some of the earlier uses of those principles on the average person, or especially look at some of the African ways of using it, the average person was not so much worried about what was his sun sign. Now our astrology is kind of like tied up to what is a person's sun sign, and that means where was the sun when that person was born. But you'll find even some of the more ancient African things, or in even other countries, you'll find that for average people, that their astrological inclinations were more connected to the days of the week. There's a crazy poem that we kind of hear that, and I don't remember it, but Sunday child or something, and Monday's child or something else, and Tuesday child. Well, that was actually a way of type of astrology that was used for normal people. That your sign was more the day that you were born on than anything else. In Africa, it was so prevalent to use the day. In some parts of Africa, remember when you say Africa, Africa has many nations that are part of it, and many different cultures. But in many of them, they use the days of the week as a part of each child's name, and that would give everybody in the community a kind of like an insight to what things that child would need to help it to grow in life. I think everybody that's ever heard of an African name has heard of the African name Kwame. You hear a lot of people that are named Kwame. And what's kind of strange about that is Kwame actually means a person who was born on Saturday. There's an African name, I don't hear them much, there's an African name that's called Coffee. And Coffee actually means born on a Friday. There's an African name that's used a lot called Yah. Yah means born on a Thursday. And remember they had that movie, not movie, but in the book, Robinson Crusoe, I think he was a lost one on the island. You see that he had an Indian companion that was named Friday, was showing again that part of his name actually came from the day that he was born on. That was one way that astrology was used for common people. And the reason I keep saying for common people is because they would usually have a system that was more intricate, that was more like what we do in casting a star chart for someone, that they would use for people who were considered to be kings or of royalty, because they believed that people actually were living under the influence of the person who was the ruling person of that. So they would have a way of formulating a more in-depth chart on the person who was the leader of the people, so that they could then determine what would be good days and bad days for both that leader and for the community, and would be helped and consulted a lot of times in making decisions about various things that would happen under the rule of that particular person. So the principles of astrology goes back into very ancient times. The practice of giving a natal chart to everybody does not go that far back. And I think one of the changes we're going to have to look for is that when the Greeks became involved in astrology, they did something that is actually going to have to be corrected at some point, because what they did to make the casting of astrological things simpler for them is that that's probably they kind of made 0 degrees on of the circle of the sun. So they're saying if you could take the sun circling Earth and find out where the 0 point is that they fixed 0 at Aries 0. And the only problem with that is that every 26,000 years, the starting point moves. So and when I say the starting point moves, it's like we're talking about the dawning of the age of Aquarius. What that means is that when the age of Aquarius steps in, the end of the signs will be in Aquarius, and the first sign of the zodiac will be Pisces. And I know you're saying, wait a minute, what are you saying? Remember, when the Greeks took power, they were in the Piscean age. In the Piscean age, the last sign of the zodiac would be Pisces, as we have it now. So Aries would become the first sign. Well, when you slip backwards, when we go from the Piscean age to the Aquarian age, then the last sign will be Aquarius, and Pisces will be the first sign. But so each time there is a going from one age to other age, and this is now they calculate that by where the center that the whole universe is and when I say center, the point on which the whole sun and everything is revolving around, it moves. And so what was called the pole star during one sign moves to another point, but it takes a lot of years. And we're kind of getting at the end of the period for when it was pointing to where we are now. So at some point, the signs are going to have to change. And even in the Aquarian Gospel, at the beginning of the book, it talks about this changing over of the guards. In the Aquarian Gospel, actually tells you that the guards are already in the process of changing over. And when that change is made, the astrology will have to adapt to that. And since I'm talking about adaptability, it's probably a good time to talk about it, because things adapt. It changes over time. And right now we're stuck in a time. Now, it's not saying that it will be in our lifetime, but in as we progress, some of the future generations will have to make some adjustments in astrology to make it work. But will it still be the same principles? The principles will be the same, but it will just be the way they calculate it, or how it affects your birth and how it affects your certain things about you. All of that will change over time. Any comments or questions about that? I probably talked about that longer than I needed to. But not something we probably have to learn where about in our lifetime, but something that is going to come. Now we're going to do the last 2 lessons for January. And so on January 16th, I called it Your Dream, Your Mountain, Choose Community Over Chaos. And the 16th was the day before we celebrate Martin Luther King's birthday. And I say that because we celebrate Martin Luther King's birthday on Mondays. Monday was the 17th. So we celebrated Martin Luther King's birthday on the 17th of January this year, even though Martin Luther King's actual birth date is January the 15th. So we did a lesson on Martin Luther King on the 16th. And I'll read the narrative I have for this. At a recent lecture, Dr. Martin Luther King's biographer, Dr. Claiborne Carson, said that Dr. King's oratory has a way of touching a chord inside most individuals to make them feel a personal connection to King's symbolic messages. The symbols inspire us to consider our personal dreams and our personal mountains. Dr. Carson also recommended that we look at the last book of Dr. King, in quotes, "Where do we go from here? Chaos or Community?" End quotes. In this session, we discuss the benefits of making a personal choice of community building techniques over chaotic actions to make a better future. Among the topics discussed were using love instead of burdening your character with hate, allowing the American principles to be born again in our society, and realizing that divine dissatisfaction was a necessary component of social change for the betterment of the nation. So I said these are a concept that we got from Dr. Martin Luther King by way of his biographer, Dr. Clayman Carson. And I said biographer, technically what he was is after Martin Luther King died, Coretta King chose him to be the one that was over collecting and classifying Dr. King's papers and books and all of those things. So he was sort of like an archivist who was putting all the things together, and he wrote many things about Dr. King's life and about his philosophies. And Teresa and I were fortunate enough to be at a breakfast that the Broward County YMCA has every year. I think it was on the Friday, which I can't remember the date. It was Friday, I think. That we went and heard him and hear what he was talking, what Dr. Carson had to say. And one part of what he was saying is that the way Dr. King spoke was not just to make these things his dream and his mountain. When he's saying, you know, I have a dream or I've seen the mountaintop. He said that Dr. King, with many of those types of imagery he was using, was trying to get the individual to feel that same imagery inside of them. Feel, what is your dream? What is the mountain that you had in your life that you were trying to climb in your life? And he says that what made Dr. King so effective, that it wasn't just Dr. King's dream or Dr. King's seeing the mountaintop, but that you have these things that you are striving for as a dream or as a mountain that you are trying to get to, and to be able to see what you would see, what you would have on that mountain, and what Dr. King would call the beautiful community. So part of it was in seeing these things about Dr. King is how to personalize them to yourself, not to see them as, oh, this is what Dr. King wanted to say. No, how do I look at what's my dream, what's my mountain, and how can I achieve it? And the other part of the book that he said we should look at to help us to do that is, where do we go from here? Chaos or community? So when you look at yourself and look at your life, when you see where you are and what you have as a dream and what you have as a mountain, how do you decide where do you go from there? And this was a book that was the last book that Dr. King wrote just before his death. So in 1967, he took some time off, went to Jamaica, and tried to collect all his thoughts into a book. And the book that he did it in was Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? And actually tells us about the choice we have to make in life. How do we go from where we are now? We have this dream. How do we accomplish that dream? And he was saying you have the choice to make. Are you going to choose chaos as the way you're going to achieve that dream? Or are you going to use the concept of community to achieve that dream? And so through some of the nonviolent steps that he had, that's what he was saying. He was trying to use the concepts of community, or like we were talking earlier about the unity that we talked about in the Kwanzaa principles, as what you can use to make a better community, and not always trying to use chaos. Chaos, he believed, were those things that the three evils of using poverty and using militarism and using racism to stifle community and to keep control of community, keep control of the people. But he said there are other parts where you can look at how you work together in peace with the community for the betterment, and that's what we should be choosing. And in the book, we summarized it into three major areas that he talked about in Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos Community. And that was how to use love instead of using hate as your as part of your character and building a better community. Because he said that one of the reasons he didn't want to hate, because hate was too much of a burden on you. He said, in talking about hate, he said that in his marches and his things, he had saw the hate on the faces of the police officers, on the faces of government officials, on the faces of people, and he saw how it distorted their character, so it's almost they became unrecognizable as human beings almost. And he says that that is what hate is going to do. It's going to get you out of your true character when you try to use hate to make change in society. So he said, instead of trying to use hate and taking on that burden of all the nastiness and the greed and all those other things that hate fosters, that we should try to use love as the way that we resolve these issues. And how we look at the important part of how we use love of binding things together. But he said in his look at things and seeing them, he looked at the principles of America and said that we actually need to get them to be born again in our society. In a way, to me, what he was saying is that we've gotten away from the real true basis of those principles, to that we've gotten away from the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and we've made it become something else. And for us to really to make America the wonderful place that it could be, the beautiful place that it could be, we have to again allow those principles to be born again in this society and actually work to get them. And he said, and one of the ways of doing this is realizing that is a way to be what he called divine dissatisfaction, is that because you were being divine and you were working with universal principles and with love, didn't mean that you didn't point out the things that were dissatisfying to get to that point of community. That you had to look at, be dissatisfied with some of the things, that you don't have to say, oh, it's all good, whatever, whatever got us here is okay. You have to say, but some of the things that got us here, we have to be dissatisfied with them if we want to make things better. Anyone had any comments or questions about that lesson we had on this January 16th? I think someone was talking. That's just my feedback. Okay, but I think that was a very beautiful lesson on Dr. King, especially thinking about how him encouraging us to start to learn how to use the principles of love. So some of the things that we always talk about is the 6 steps for nonviolent social change, how they are actually giving you a game plan for using the right type of love. Because another thing that's going to be talked about here is the right type of love and the wrong type of love. That we're talking about, not talking about a love that just buries its head in the sand and accept things. And that's what he was talking about divine dissatisfaction. Just because you're using love doesn't mean that if you're using the right type of love, you would actually work to get rid of the dissatisfying things that are part of a community around you. And our last lesson for January, I'm going to get this because we're getting near the end of our time, was using the workshop of the mind to declare your profession. So it's using the workshop of the mind to declare your profession. And I'll read the narrative. It says the astrological sign known as Capricorn is said to predominate over the house of profession. Although we generally look at the word profession to mean a career, the word comes from a Latin root that means a vow made on entering a religious order, or publicly declare that you have the skills to perform an occupation. We look at the passage from the 20th chapter of the Quran Gospel of Jesus Christ to see how he compared the tools of the carpenter to tools we can use to improve our character. We can use our minds to measure our thoughts, encircle our passions, square up our ideas, and create firm connections to the structure of our endeavors. So again, we're looking at in Capricorn, even though this is real near the end of Capricorn, the 23rd, but they are the house of profession. In our lessons, some places they call it the house of careers. In our lessons, it's called the house of professions. And in the professions, we look at what the Greek word profession means, and it means something that you profess to be skilled at. So we need to become skilled at using the tools we have in our mind to be able to build the type of character that we think should be in this world. And we looked at a part of the 20th chapter of the Korean Gospel, where it tells us about how Jesus used the tools that he used as a carpenter. His career or profession was really a carpenter. His father was a carpenter, and he had learned how to be a carpenter. But in the Korean Gospel, it tells us how he saw these carpenter tools as something that was actually teaching him how he could work in the workshop of the mind, or work in that workshop of these spiritual things. I mean, we say thoughts of things, and then not saying if they're things. He's saying, there are things that can be measured. There are things that can be used to encircle things. They can be things that can be squared off, and things that can be used to create firm connections, like nailing things together. So these thoughts can be worked on just like a carpenter works on wood to make structures and things that are beautiful in our lives. So any profession you have, when you profess to have skills in it, you should be saying, how can I use those skills to actually make my character better? How can I use the organizational skills, or the logical skills, or the processing type skills actually on my character to make me the person that is more like God and more like I want to be? Any comments or questions about that? Now that
I
is
remember we said that you needed tools. You needed to have some tools to throughout your life to work with you and help you to work with problems.
yes, that you need to get tools and and learn how to be skilled on
Prepare.
those tools to fix the things that are happening in your life. That you just can't say, "Oh, it's going to happen." That you need tools that you can use to actually, because there are things happen in life that, it's just like you're saying, I just can't go out there and get a whole bunch of trees and try to I can make a chair out of trees. Uh, but if I wanted to make a beautiful stable chair out of trees, there are certain principles that I need to use. So I can just take a branch and throw it down and say, oh, that's a chair. Or I can say, I can take some parts and I can start measuring them out to make sure it's going to be even, have like a design that I have in mind, square the things off so there's going to be a firm structure, and then use something to actually connect it up together. And now I have this sturdy, beautiful chair that is made out of wood. And that's how we have to think about our own character. Are we just going to say, oh, yes, I'm going to be a Christian, but I'm not going to have any tools to try to make sure that it's just whatever like the kids say, it is what it is? Or are you going to say, something, I am going to use this to make something better? Because God has given me tools and principles and ideas in my mind, in my heart, in my soul, that I can use them to make this to be a sturdy and beautiful character, or furniture, or whatever you want to call it. But whatever your profession is, whatever you profess to be skilled in, you can find tools to make yourself make yourself a better person and make the world a better place. Any other comments? Because I know we've been going long, and I know when we have the reviews, sometimes it's hard because and for Pleasant Sundays, some of them there are maybe 2 months that go by, some of them are 3 months. So it's usually a lot of lessons to review, and I do try to go over it quickly. And you might hear a lesson that you might want to go back and listen to it. And we do have the lessons up on our website at www.spiritualguidancetemple.org. I am up to date. I'm not always up to date, but right now all the lessons are there to go back and look at if it's the one that you want to look at. And they are long, but it's in such a way that you can skip to parts because when they come up on your computer, you'll be able to move the dial to a certain part if you want to hear it. If you want to fast forward through some things, you'll be able to do that in the lesson. So I don't think you don't have to if you want to. You don't sit down and say, "Oh, I got to listen to the whole thing." No, you can move the dial um, on the video to any point that you want to go over and see it. There are even ways for the real advanced to since they're YouTubes, you can even make YouTube translated into words and search through the point in there where that word is said. That's for the real advanced. You don't have to get that advanced. You can just pull them up and move the little slider down to the bottom when it comes up to move to where you want. But if there are no other questions or comments, we know that February will be coming in this week, and so we'll do. In fact, Black History Month will start on Tuesday. So, and the theme for this year's Black History Month is about health, African American health. And then next week we'll be going over the message for the month of February, because we didn't get to it this time. So we will probably talk about Black history not next time, but the time after that we'll talk about the Black history theme. Also want to mention that February the 7th is coming up. February 7th will be after our next lesson, and that is the celebration of the birthday for several people, including our Supreme Father Marshal, Myron, and I forget because it's about 4 people that have their birthdays on that day. About 4 birthdays that are from the temple that are done on February the 7th. And then on February the 14th is Valentine's Day, and February the 15th is Zandra Davis's birthday. And so one of these, yeah, and I think I'll be going up to, she's going to be 40, but we're going to be celebrating her art in a little, she says it's a sort of art celebration that she's going to have for herself for a 40th birthday party that we won't be doing on the 15th, but we'll be doing that, I think, on the 19th. I'll be away in Georgia helping her celebrate that. So any other announcements? If not, then just let me say, in the words of our Supreme Mother for this year, today I will walk in the light, talk in the light, think in the light. I am the light within. So thank you for
Amen.
being. So, would someone have a comment?
No, I just said amen. Bye.
Okay, thank you.
Amen.
So, yes, thank you for being with us. Again, our website is www.spiritualguidancetemple.org. There's also a button if you'd like to make donations, which are good for us continuing some of the things that we're working with. There's a button you can make a donation to us on that website, but you can also send money to us through Cash App or Zelle through the number 954-549-4713. Or with Zelle, you can send it to offerings@spiritualguidancetemple.org. There are 2 ways to do Zelle. You can do the phone number, or you can do offerings@spiritualguidancetemple.org to make our donations to help us meet some of the challenges that we have for maintaining our building and our other expenses that come up for the organizations. And we thank those who have been making donations to us for those things. And if it's nothing else, let me do our dismissal. I'll stay open a little bit afterwards, but for our dismissal, let me say, may the love of God illuminate your way. May the will of God direct you each day. May the truth of God all errors depart. And may the peace of God forever dwell in your heart. Amen. Amen. Amen.